of our nation.
Just when we thought nothing else could be done, King Charles just changed everything. Behind closed doors, he signed a secret decree that gives Catherine unprecedented power. No announcements, no warnings to the rest of the family. Courtiers are calling it a quiet coup. This single move alters the entire future of the monarchy. The Midnight Decree. The paperwork landed on the desk in the middle of May. It did not come through the usual channels. It did not sit in the red boxes. A private courier brought it straight from the king's private office to the princess. The document is a letters patent. That is a rare legal tool. It allows the king to grant titles or powers without going through parliament. Charles used it to appoint Catherine to a special council. She can now sign official documents on his behalf. She does not need Prince William's approval to do it. This makes her the most powerful female royal since Queen Elizabeth II. The staff at Buckingham Palace found out 24 hours later. The reaction was immediate panic. Palace officials pride themselves on knowing every move before it happens. This time, they knew nothing. The king's private secretary called an emergency meeting. Phone lines between London and Windsor buzzed for hours. One high-ranking courtier threatened to resign over the breach of protocol. They felt the move bypassed the traditional chain of command. The king ignored the complaints. The decision was already final. The signatures were on the page. Why did Charles do this so quickly? The answer lies in the medical calendar. The king's treatment schedule is heavy. He needs a backup plan that does not involve political drama. He needed someone he could trust completely with the crown's daily business. Usually, Prince William handles these tasks. But William is already stretched thin. He runs the Duchy of Cornwall. He attends foreign summits. He manages his own charitable foundations. Adding more paperwork to his desk was not practical. Charles knew his son needed support, not more stress. So the king looked to Catherine. She has been in the family for over a decade. She knows the system inside out. The public trusts her. More importantly, the king trusts her judgment. By giving her this authority, Charles secured the stability of the firm. But this decision leaves one major question hanging. A specific group of people was completely ignored during the process. The lawyers in London did not consult anyone outside the immediate working circle. The news traveled fast. By the end of the week, the documents were locked in a secure safe at Windsor Castle. But the rumor mill was already spinning. The staff knew the rules had changed. The balance of power shifted without a single press conference. This leaves a bigger mystery on the table. The king's move keeps the institution safe from internal collapse. But it also creates a massive roadblock for the rest of the family. Who was deliberately kept in the dark while this document was prepared? The answer involves a private phone call that took place just days before the signing. Let us look at how this meeting came together. The king sat at his desk on a Tuesday afternoon. He had 3 files in front of him. None of these files contained typical routine schedules. They held the legal framework for the Council of State. Under the old rules, only the monarch's spouse and the next 4 royals in the line of succession could act as counselors. That group included William, Harry, Andrew, and Beatrice. But 2 of those names are no longer working royals. Harry lives thousands of miles away. Andrew stepped back from public duties years ago. That left the kings with a very thin line of defense. Charles knew he had to fix this flaw. He did not want a constitutional crisis if he became too ill to sign state papers. He needed someone on the ground in London who could act instantly. The lawyers suggested adding more names to the list. They talked about Prince Edward and Princess Anne. The king agreed to that change earlier, but this new decree goes much further. It gives Catherine independent authority to act on her own during specific windows of time. The palace staff did not expect this level of independence. They expected Catherine to assist William, not to hold equal legal weight. When the news hit the offices at Clarence House, the atmosphere changed. Senior aides started digging through old royal diaries. They wanted to see if a precedent existed for this setup. The closest example goes back to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, during the early years of her daughter's reign. But even then, the circumstances were different. The country was not dealing with the current level of intense public scrutiny. Today, every royal move is parsed by millions online. A shift like this sends a massive signal to the global public. It signals that Catherine is no longer just a supportive spouse. She is now an official pillar of the state structure. This position gives her a direct say in how the family handles its vast estates and public duties. The immediate result of this change became clear during a private dinner at Windsor. The king and the princess sat down to discuss the upcoming schedule. William was not in the room for the first hour of that meeting. He arrived later, after the main points were already settled. Who was left out of the loop completely? The advisors in California received zero communication about this change. They found out at the same time as the general public. The move effectively blocks any chance of Prince Harry returning to a temporary official role. His position as a counselor of state is now completely redundant on a practical level. Catherine holds the pen. She holds the authority. But the mystery does not end with the California household. Inside the palace walls, a new question is keeping courtiers awake at night. If Catherine holds this new power, what happens to the traditional role of the Prince of Wales? The balance between husband and wife has just shifted in a very public way. The 10-minute call. The paperwork was signed, but the physical reality of the change began on a Monday morning in late May. Catherine arrived at her desk in Adelaide Cottage. The room is small compared to the grand offices of Buckingham Palace. It has plain wooden shelves and a view of the Windsor Gardens. But on this morning, 3 large leather folders sat on the table. They were bound in blue ribbon. This was her first batch of official state briefings. Catherine did not jump into this role overnight. For 18 months, she studied the constitutional history of the crown. She spent hours with the late Queen's former private secretaries. They met in quiet corners of Windsor Castle, far away from the cameras. She learned how the Privy Council operates. She memorized the names of the current Commonwealth governors. She prepared for this responsibility, while the public thought she was only focusing on her health recovery. The transition happened without a single public speech. That is exactly how the king wanted it. He wanted the foundation to shift smoothly, without causing panic in the financial markets or the press. But the silence inside the palace created its own kind of friction. The traditional courtiers who manage Prince William's office were caught off guard. They are used to controlling the flow of information. Suddenly, Catherine had her own direct line to the king's red boxes. This brings us to the resolution of our first major question. Why was Prince William kept at a distance during the final legal drafting of this decree? The answer is purely tactical. The king's lawyers insisted on total legal neutrality. If William helped draft the document, it could look like a family cartel seizing control from an ailing monarch. By keeping William out of the drafting room, the lawyers ensured the decree was entirely the king's independent choice. William did not push for this change, nor did he oppose it. He remained at arm's length to protect the legitimacy of the crown. When William finally read the completed letters patent, he was at his own desk in Kensington Palace. An aide brought him the copy. He read it through twice, nodded, and placed it in his briefcase. There was no argument. There was no jealousy. He knew the workload facing the family was too heavy for one man to carry alone. But while the family remained united, the bureaucratic machinery of the palace began to push back. A small group of senior advisors tried to sabotage the decree just days before the king signed it. These advisors belonged to the old guard. They believed the monarchy must follow strict patriarchal lines. They did not like the idea of a spouse who was born a commoner holding independent constitutional weight. They feared it would diminish the traditional authority of the Prince of Wales. These courtiers tried to use a technicality to block the paperwork. They claimed the letters patent required a full signature from the Lord Chancellor before it could take effect. They hoped the legal delay would buy them enough time to change the king's mind. They underestimated Charles. The king bypassed the standard administrative queue. He called the Lord Chancellor directly on a private line. The conversation lasted less than 10 minutes. By 5 o'clock that evening, the necessary legal approvals were delivered by a motorcycle courier to Windsor Castle. The courtiers' plan failed completely. This failed rebellion created a deep rift inside the palace walls. The king's private secretary began investigating who leaked the draft documents to the traditionalist faction. 2 mid-level aides were quietly reassigned to administrative duties in Scotland. The message was clear. Opposition to the new order would not be tolerated. With the internal revolt crushed, Catherine began her work in earnest. Her new duties are not just symbolic. She does not just sign her name to pre-approved documents. She reads the full intelligence briefings. She reviews the appointments of senior bishops in the Church of England. She looks over the background files for incoming foreign ambassadors. This level of involvement requires a massive amount of time. Her daily schedule is now split into 2 distinct halves. The morning is for her family and her health. The afternoon is for the state. On Wednesday afternoons, a black royal sedan leaves Windsor and drives to London. It does not go to the front gates of Buckingham Palace. It goes to a side entrance at Clarence House. There, Catherine meets with the King's chief legal advisor. They spend 2 hours going through the latest government proposals. The public sees nothing of this. They see the princess attending occasional charity events or releasing family photographs. But behind the scenes, her signature is already appearing on documents that affect the daily governance of the realm. This shift has created a new dynamic between Catherine and William. They are no longer just a married couple preparing for a future reign. They are now working partners with equal stakes in the current administration. This setup has its advantages. It allows William to travel overseas without worrying about the home front. He can attend environmental summits in New York or military reviews in Germany, knowing that the constitutional duties are safe in Windsor. But this new arrangement also opens a deeper mystery. The palace successfully managed the internal tension. They shut down the courtiers' rebellion. They kept William's office aligned with the king's goals. But they could not control the reaction outside of the United Kingdom. While Catherine settled into her new office, a completely different set of lawyers began reviewing the decree from a villa in California. They were not looking at church appointments or ambassador profiles. They were looking at the survival of their own royal status. The new decree blocks Prince Harry from any future role, but it does something else too. It sets a new trap for the Sussex brand. What did the California lawyers find when they read the fine print of the king's new law? The hidden clause. A private legal team gathered in a conference room in Los Angeles on the first Thursday of June. The table was covered in printed copies of the British letters patent. These lawyers did not work for the crown. They worked for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. They spent 4 hours analyzing the language of the new decree, line by line. The Sussex legal team found a specific clause hidden on page 4. The clause states that any councillor of state must maintain a primary residence within the United Kingdom to exercise independent signing powers. If a royal lives abroad, their authority automatically enters a state of permanent suspension. This fact resolved the immediate question regarding Prince Harry's status. The new rule does not strip him of his title. It does not officially remove him from the succession list. That would require an act of parliament. Instead, the king used a bureaucratic padlock. By giving Catherine independent authority, the king made Harry's theoretical return completely irrelevant. The pen is in Windsor, and the law states it cannot leave the country. The tension inside the California villa grew when the lawyers explained the financial impact. The Sussex brand relies heavily on its remaining links to the British monarchy. Major entertainment contracts depend on that royal status. With Catherine holding this new constitutional power, the Sussexes are completely locked out of the governance of the firm. They are now purely private citizens who happen to have titles. Back in London, the institutional panic took a new turn. A high-ranking courtier from the old guard followed through on their threat. They dropped an official letter of resignation on the king's desk at Clarence House. The letter was written on a heavy cream paper. It came from a senior advisor who spent 20 years managing royal protocol. The advisor stated that bypassing the traditional hierarchy would damage the monarchy's stability. They argued that giving a non-blood royal such vast constitutional power sets a dangerous precedent for the future. The king did not attempt to stop the advisor from leaving. He accepted the resignation within 1 hour. The palace press office released a short statement saying the advisor left to pursue private interests. Behind closed doors, the king immediately replaced them with a younger lawyer who specializes in modern corporate governance. This sudden exit sent a shockwave through the rest of the staff. Employees at Buckingham Palace realized that loyalty to old traditions would no longer protect their jobs. The king was rebuilding the management team to fit a smaller, more efficient monarchy. Let us look at the financial facts behind this transformation. The British monarchy costs the public over £80 million a year through the sovereign grant. In return, the government expects the family to handle thousands of official engagements and state documents annually. With the king's ongoing medical treatments, the workload fell heavily on a shrinking team. Prince Edward and Princess Anne are both over 60 years old. They already log hundreds of events each year. They could not take on the heavy burden of constitutional paperwork without dropping their charity work. Catherine's new role fixes this math problem. She can handle the legal signatures from her home office. allowing the other senior royals to keep up their public appearances. It keeps the machinery running smoothly without increasing the cost to the British taxpayer. But this solution introduced a new mystery that is currently dividing the palace legal teams. The letters patent gives Catherine authority during the king's current illness, but the language of the document is surprisingly open-ended. It does not include an expiration date. This brings us to a major question that senior royals are discussing behind closed doors. What happens to this independent power when King Charles recovers completely? Does the authority revert entirely to the monarch, or does Catherine retain a permanent seat at the constitutional table? The legal text suggests that the power remains active unless the king issues a specific counter-decree to revoke it. Revoking a power given to a highly popular princess would create a massive public relations headache. Courtiers believe this means Catherine's elevation is permanent. She is no longer just a future queen waiting for her time. She is a current manager of the state. This permanent shift creates a brand new dynamic for Prince William's future reign. When he eventually ascends the throne, his wife will already have years of direct experience handling the secret papers of the state. She will not need a transition period. She will already know the names, the networks, and the legal levers of power. The immediate impact of this new reality became visible during a meeting at St. James's Palace. A group of government officials arrived to deliver the latest briefing on the Commonwealth trade agreements. Usually, these officials meet exclusively with the King or the Prince of Wales. This time, the officials were directed to a boardroom where Catherine sat at the head of the table. She spent 45 minutes questioning the officials about specific clauses in the trade deals. She did not take notes. She had an aide record the session for her private review. The officials left the palace with a completely different view of the princess. They realized she was no longer just a fashion icon or a patron of children's charities. She was actively participating in the political structures of the nation. This leads to the next unfolding mystery. While the government officials accepted this new reality, the public is still completely unaware of the depth of Catherine's new authority. The palace has only released basic details about her return to light duties. They are keeping the full scope of her legal powers hidden from the front pages. Why is the palace keeping the true extent of her power a secret? What are they afraid will happen if the British public finds out exactly how much control Catherine now wields over the daily running of the country? The answer involves a delicate piece of legislation that is currently moving through Parliament: the King's signature. The meeting started at exactly 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. The location was a private sitting room on the first floor of Windsor Castle. Prince William sat on a green velvet sofa near the window. He was looking through a 20-page briefing document from the Home Office. Catherine sat across from him at a small mahogany table. She was using a black pen to sign her name at the bottom of an official state warrant. This specific warrant authorized the appointment of a new senior judge to the High Court. Under normal circumstances, only King Charles could sign this type of document. The new letters patent changed that rule completely. Catherine now holds the exact same legal authority as the monarch for these specific administrative appointments. Let us look at the exact legal facts of this setup. The power is called a dual signature mandate. It allows the Princess of Wales to sign documents without the Prince of Wales countersigning them. This keeps her office entirely independent of William's staff. It prevents any bureaucratic overlap between the two distinct royal households. This separation of power resolved the mystery of Prince William's private reaction. Some junior aides expected William to feel slighted by his wife's sudden legal elevation. The reality inside the palace was completely different. William actually pushed for this specific independent clause during a private meeting with the Prime Minister in April. William wanted Catherine to have her own distinct legal weight for a practical reason. He needs to focus on the long-term strategic survival of the Duchy of Cornwall. The duchy manages over 130,000 acres of land across 23 counties. It generates millions of pounds in annual revenue. Managing this vast estate requires William to travel constantly for face-to-face meetings with tenants and land developers. If Catherine did not have independent signing powers, William would be trapped at his desk in London. He would spend hours reviewing routine state warrants instead of managing the family's primary financial engine. Catherine's new authority frees him from that administrative cage. It allows them to divide the workload of the monarchy evenly. But this smooth transition hit a massive wall of tension when the paperwork reached the Privy Council office. The Privy Council is a formal body of senior politicians who advise the monarch. Some members of this council objected to the secrecy of the new arrangement. They argued that the public has a right to know exactly who is signing state documents. A senior member of Parliament raised the issue during a closed-door committee meeting in Westminster. He pointed out that the official court circular only lists Catherine's public charity visits. It does not record her administrative signatures on state documents. He argued that this lack of transparency could create a legal challenge if a disgruntled citizen questioned the validity of a royal warrant. The palace legal team anticipated this objection. They produced a precedent from 1953. During that year, Queen Elizabeth II signed a similar confidential warrant to delegate authority while she was traveling through the Commonwealth. The legal team proved that the monarch has the absolute right to delegate these duties without publishing a daily log of every signature. With the politicians satisfied, the work continued without interruption. Catherine's signature now appears on 3 major categories of documents. She reviews the appointments of royal chaplains. She signs the paperwork for senior military commissions. She also approves the distribution of specific charitable grants from the Crown estates. This brings us to the next unfolding mystery. While the administrative work is happening smoothly, the palace is tracking a strange pattern of digital activity. The official royal website contains a secure portal where state documents are uploaded for electronic review. Over a period of 3 weeks, the palace security team noticed multiple unauthorized attempts to log into this specific server. The IP addresses used in these hacking attempts did not come from foreign hacker groups. They were traced back to a small commercial office building in Santa Barbara, California. This building is located just 15 minutes away from Prince Harry's private residence. Why is someone in California trying to gain access to Catherine's digital briefing portal? What specific information are they looking for inside the confidential files of the British state? The answer involves a private diary that belonged to the late Queen Elizabeth, which is currently locked in a vault at Windsor Castle. The California Wire. A courier dropped a heavy FedEx envelope onto the kitchen counter of a villa in Montecito on a Friday morning. Prince Harry opened the package using a silver letter opener. Inside was a 15-page legal opinion from his London solicitors. The document carried a red stamp, marking it as strictly confidential. The report confirmed that the California server logins had been flagged by British intelligence. The Sussex tech team was trying to access the Royal Court Circular's back-end database. They wanted to verify if Catherine's name was appearing on Privy Council orders. The solicitors delivered a blunt assessment. The path to a temporary royal return was permanently dead. Let us look at the legal facts that triggered this report. The Regency Act of 1937 governs how the British monarchy handles the illness of a king. If a monarch cannot perform his duties, the next person in line steps in as regent, that is, Prince William. But if William is out of the country, the law requires a panel called Councillors of State to sign papers. The California team believed Harry would automatically get a call if the king and William were both unavailable. They based this on the fact that Harry remains 5th in the line of succession. His lawyers were preparing a formal offer of assistance to the British government based on that specific scenario. The new letters patent destroyed that strategy completely. By giving Catherine independent signing powers, King Charles filled the vacancy without altering the Regency Act. The government does not need to look down the succession line anymore. Catherine is on the ground in Windsor, holding the necessary legal stamps. This fact resolved the macro loop regarding the Sussex fallback plan. The door is not just closed, the lock has been changed. Harry's status as a Councillor of State is now a completely empty title. He cannot fly to London to step in for his father because Catherine already holds the pen. The tension escalated when the financial implications hit the couple's media ventures. The Sussexes have a massive production deal with a major streaming network. That contract is up for renewal at the end of the year. The network executives previously valued the couple's inner knowledge of the royal machine. With Catherine holding the constitutional reins, the power dynamic shifted. The network executives realized Harry was completely isolated from the palace information flow. A senior vice president sent an email to the couple's manager asking for a production update. The tone of the email was cold and corporate. It was clear that the commercial value of the Sussex brand was dropping fast. Meanwhile, back at Windsor, Prince William reacted to the California situation with a specific action. He met with the head of the palace digital security team at 9 o'clock on Thursday morning. The meeting took place in the library of Cumberland Lodge. William looked at a spreadsheet showing the login attempts from Santa Barbara. He did not call his brother. He did not send an angry text message. Instead, he ordered the security team to install a permanent digital firewall between the Windsor servers and any external networks outside the United Kingdom. This move resolved the micro-loop about William's reaction. He felt zero anger or rivalry toward his brother. He viewed the situation as a basic corporate security issue. He protected his wife's digital workspace with the same clinical efficiency he uses to manage the Duchy of Cornwall estates. With the digital firewall active, the palace legal team turned their attention to the late Queen's private diary. This document is a small, leather-bound book with a gold lock. It sits inside a climate-controlled safe in the Royal Archives at Windsor Castle. The diary contains Queen Elizabeth's personal notes from the final months of her life. Crucially, it includes her specific thoughts on the future roles of both Catherine and Meghan Markle. The King gave Catherine the key to this archive box as part of her new constitutional briefing materials. This leads us directly into the final unfolding mystery of this palace shift. Catherine spent 3 hours inside the Royal Archives on Tuesday evening. She read the late Queen's final diary entries from August 22. When she left the room, she carried a single photocopied page in her leather folder. Why did the King want Catherine to read those specific diary entries before she started signing state papers? What secret did Queen Elizabeth leave behind that justifies Catherine's sudden elevation above all other blood royals? The answer involves a private agreement made at Balmoral Castle just days before the old Queen passed away. The new guard takes the reins. Catherine laid the photocopied page flat on her oak desk at Adelaide Cottage. The text was written in Queen Elizabeth's characteristic slanting cursive. The date at the top read August 28, 2022. This was exactly 12 days before the late monarch passed away at Balmoral. The diary entry contained a specific instruction regarding the future structure of the family. The late Queen wrote that the survival of the crown depended on a unified local management team. She explicitly stated that non-working family members living abroad must have zero access to state governance. She noted that Catherine possessed the exact emotional and administrative stability needed to anchor the crown during any future medical crisis. This text resolved the mystery of why King Charles acted so decisively. He was not making a sudden, desperate gamble. He was executing his mother's final written wish. The King waited until his own medical treatments made the administrative burden unmanageable. Then he pulled the legal trigger that he and his mother planned years ago. The dynamic became absolute during a family gathering on the second Sunday of June. The venue was the private dining room at Windsor Castle. King Charles sat at the head of the table. Prince William and Catherine sat directly across from him. Princess Anne and Prince Edward occupied the remaining seats. The King placed a leather folder containing the updated sovereign grant report on the table. The figures showed a clear reallocation of resources. The budget for international royal travel was reduced by 15%. The savings were redirected to upgrade the digital security systems at Windsor and Kensington Palace. The room grew tense when Prince Edward asked about the public presentation of this new structure. He wanted to know how the palace would handle the inevitable media questions about the Princess of Wales signing state documents in secret. He pointed out that the British press would eventually notice the shift in administrative patterns. Princess Anne answered before the King could speak. She pulled out a printed copy of the official court circular from the previous week. She noted that Catherine's name appeared next to 4 separate administrative reviews. The press had completely missed the entries because they were listed under standard civil service subheadings. The palace did not need to hide the work. They just needed to label it as routine administration. Let us look at the official facts of this operational model. The British civil service processes over 10,000 royal warrants and orders every year. 90% of these documents are purely functional. They involve land boundaries, local council appointments, and charity charters. By handling these items, Catherine removes the daily paperwork clog from the King's desk completely. The meeting at Windsor lasted 2 hours. By the end of the session, the new operational boundaries were locked in. Prince Edward agreed to take over 3 extra international tours later in the autumn. Princess Anne accepted 20 additional domestic engagements. Catherine remained anchors in the home counties, holding the legal pen. This smooth internal setup ran into a separate problem on Monday morning. The British Prime Minister arrived at Buckingham Palace for his weekly audience with the King. He carried an intelligence brief from the Foreign Office. The report detailed an upcoming international summit in Canada. The Canadian government is a constitutional monarchy. King Charles is their official head of state. The Prime Minister explained that a small group of anti-monarchy politicians in Ottawa planned to introduce a motion during the summit. The motion sought to replace the king with an elected president. The politicians planned to use the king's current illness as their primary argument. They intended to claim that a monarch who cannot travel cannot effectively represent the Canadian people. They wanted to force a constitutional vote while the British Crown was distracted by internal family drama. The palace legal team immediately deployed their new asset. They did not send a senior politician to Ottawa to negotiate. Instead, they used Catherine's new constitutional authority to sign a special royal proclamation. The proclamation appointed the Governor-General of Canada to act with full royal powers during the upcoming summit. Catherine signed the document at her Windsor desk at 3 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon. A military courier delivered the physical paper to the Canadian High Commission in London 1 hour later. The swift action completely neutralized the anti-monarchy motion in Ottawa. When the Canadian politicians stood up to present their case, the Governor-General produced the signed royal proclamation. The legal paperwork proved that the machinery of the Crown was operating at 100% efficiency despite the King's absence. The motion was dropped before it reached a vote. This international victory cemented Catherine's position as the functional head of the new guard. The traditional advisors who previously tried to block her appointment finally went silent. They realized that her efficiency was the only thing preventing a wider constitutional collapse. But as the international crisis settled, a final domestic mystery emerged inside the walls of Clarence House. The King's personal medical team requested an extraordinary meeting with Prince William on Wednesday evening. The doctors did not include any palace aides in the invitation. The meeting took place in the King's private study. The head physician presented William with an updated timeline for the King's upcoming autumn treatment cycle. The document contained a specific date in October that was circled in red ink. This brings us to the final cliffhanger of this palace shift. The October date marks a 3-week window where the King will enter total isolation for a new phase of medical care. During those 21 days, Prince William must travel to Australia for a long-delayed Commonwealth tour. This means that for 3 solid weeks in October, Catherine will be the only senior working royal holding sovereign signing powers on British soil. The entire weight of the United Kingdom's constitutional stability will rest solely on her shoulders. How will the public react when they realize a non-blood royal is running the state completely alone? What will the California exiles do when they see Catherine exercising absolute authority over the British realm? The transition is no longer a future plan. The new queen has already taken the reins. The balance of power inside the House of Windsor has changed forever. King Charles made a historic choice by giving Catherine unprecedented constitutional authority. He bypassed old traditions to protect the future of the British monarchy. This single move secures the crown, but it also creates a completely new dynamic for the family. The old guard is out, and the new guard is officially in control. What do you think about this surprise palace move? Did King Charles make the right decision to trust Catherine with the pen of state? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do not forget to hit the like button.